Yesterday or Monday, Monty dropped this link in our Slack. And I was like, yes, that stat rings true with the last 7 years of our data that we've been tracking. So I kind of poked around. I was like, yep, this is right on point. And I thought, you know what? This really has major implications for how people create their sales copy, and also your call to actions, your pipeline, your CRM, your offers. It impacts how whatever your strategies are to stay top of mind with content and all over the place, email. So there are a lot of implications with this. And today I just want to kind of narrow in on the sales copy side of things. I think it would justify, depending on how today goes, maybe we'll even spend next week talking about the content piece of staying top of mind with this 95% that we'll kind of get into. So we'll go here, and then I want to jump back and revisit this quote from Colin, I forget his last name, with Salesforce. We talked about this a few months in the past about, I don't want to spoil it, really good stuff. And then I want to jump into pipeline stuff, because this really is a better visualization for that 95%. And then I want to talk about actually what we've kind of ended up doing over the years for actual implementation. And so I'll kind of share some strategies that we do. And then I would love to open it up for discussion for what everybody else here does for effective sales copy with all of this in mind. So I'd like to steer clear of ideology and philosophy and opinions. I kind of want to know, like, what are you actually doing? So when we get to the end there, let's do that. So this is what Monty sent. Ehrenberg Bass, I don't even know. 95% of B2B buyers are not in market for your products. And so I'll kind of just cherry pick here a couple points, and feel free to chime in, but I'll say this right off the bat. What we observe, because we do reporting, we observe for the very bottom of funnel conversions, about 3 to 5% of all connections say yes to that kind of call to action. And then if you exclude people that aren't talking, which is about half of people, that brings it up to between 6 and 10%. And then in that 6 to 10%, there are some people that are, I don't know, they're not real. They say yes, but they're not really there. So I'd say take that 6 to 10% and just bring it down to 5. And I think that's quite an accurate conservative number. So the vast majority of B2B marketing messages, and this could, by the way, be in your content copy, could be in your sales copy conversationally, everywhere, could be falling on deaf ears, with up to 95% of businesses not in market for most goods and services at any one time. I'd say this especially rings true for B2B for a number of reasons. And then I'm going to jump down here. According to the report, companies change their providers of services like banking, legal advice, software, telecom around every 5 years. And I would add to that, we see it, that's totally true. We also see it down to 2 years. If it's a lower ticket item, it just seems like the more expensive something is, the longer that cycle is, and the cheaper, the shorter. So definitely down to 2 years, but still 2 years is a long time. Some people, they aren't even in sales for 2 years. You know, they might get a job, put a bunch of people in their pipeline. A year later, they're like, I don't like this job. Boom, they're gone. You know, like that's really important to keep in mind. This means that only 20% are in the market for their services in any given year, and just 5% in a given quarter. The other 95% are not in the market at all to purchase, right? I'll kind of just leave that there. Does Susan, I know you guys are pretty good at tracking stuff too, and everybody else, does that 95% ring true for everybody else in here, for those of you that keep reporting stats? And
so this is nothing new. It's
right.
A higher percentage of people that are not in the market than, say, 15 years ago, but there's always been around 85% or more of your prospects that are not going to want to have a sales call when you reach out to them. And so that has driven the way that that we approach people. We do not go out with a sales call, because I think that focusing on those people that are ready to buy now does two things. It eliminates a whole lot of people that are going to be interested in buying from you later. It also puts you in an area where you've got a lot more competition, because now they're out and they're looking, and you don't have a chance to really inform what they're looking for. So our messaging has always been, we've talked about this before. We still use a co-create content with me sort of approach to, we focus on identifying the ideal prospects and the people that the client wants to talk to. And they may turn into clients, they may turn into referral sources, they may turn into strategic partners, whatever. But that's, so this does not surprise me. And I think it's awesome that it's getting more awareness now, because that means maybe there'll be less spam.
Yeah.
So let me frame this in a little bit for us, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
a little bit, Isaac.
please do.
So what we're looking at here is LinkedIn commissioned this company to do this research. Okay, and so I totally agree. I don't know that there's necessarily anything specifically new here, but what they were really trying to get at is, should a company have a focus on short-term inbound marketing or long-term brand building, right? And what is the percentage that a company should focus on that? And so then we take this, and what they say in here, they basically said, you should spend 75% of your time with brand building marketing, which is an ongoing thing, difficult to measure. But they're saying, people recognize brands over time, and those who invest in brand building and being out there and in front of everybody at all times are the ones that ultimately win. If you focus predominantly on inbound marketing, which is, your ads and, your short-term driven stuff, you've got a very, very narrow margin of people that you can actually get to come to you from an inbound marketing standpoint. So combining the two, now we look at that and we say, okay, what level of brand marketing, what level of inbound marketing, and then how does that affect our messaging and who we're actually going to try and get after, right? So I think that's just to frame that in for you guys just a little bit.
Yeah, that's very helpful. And to give a visual of the funnel for those of you watching now and later on who aren't familiar with funnel. So, this is your typical funnel visualization. We're talking really about right here, this ready to purchase now is about 5%. And so when we're giving, and we're going to get into like sales copy in just a minute, but this understanding this directly influences your sales copy. Like if you don't think about this, your sales copy is going to suck, because you're going to assume everybody's here ready to purchase when only 5% are, and you're going to come right out of the gate with a sales pitch, alienating 95% of the people who are actually way up here, perfectly targeted, probably qualified, but not ready to buy. You burn the bridge just because you gave the wrong pitch at the wrong time, right? So that's, as far as the one-on-one dialogue, that's why it's so important to be aware. So funnel, 5%, 95%. So, and again, just high level kind of overview. Funnel, right? Top, bigger at the top, less people, farther you go down. You can kind of categorize this number of different ways. We're doing it by like, hey, I don't even know I have a problem. I'm aware that I currently have a problem. I want it to go away. I'm looking for solutions. I'm ready to buy. You could kind of plug it in a few different labels there. For sales copy now, keeping in mind that this is one-on-one, assuming that your account targeting is on point, assuming your lead targeting is on point, you are having a dialogue with a person. The mentality and the framework that we've used for many years, that's always worked. Okay, it's always worked. We've done some cool stuff with like, video and images and trying to be clever and cute and some gimmicky things, I'm all for those things. But as far as long-term, this is always effective. The way that we will approach sales messaging copy is we, as the sales team, we are interviewers, and it's our responsibility to have a two-way discussion, asking questions about this person's work and job to figure out where they're at in here. That's really our primary thing, is we're starting a conversation. It's a B2B sale. Like if you're talking to the director of operations or whoever at the company, it's not like they're personally paying you. Let's have a conversation about work. Tell me about your day-to-day. Tell me what solutions you're using. Like, how can I be your guide? And you would be shocked when you start to talk shop in a B2B context. And it's not like, I want your money, I just want to talk about work. You'd be shocked at what people talk about on LinkedIn. Like, we have one client we're working with. It's an expensive SaaS, sales cycles 5 to 10 years. You're talking probably like $100,000 is the average cost. As soon as we connect and do that first like intro message, we'll just straight up ask them, what are they using for their software solution? And like half the people will tell us exactly what they're using. You know how valuable that is for sales? We know exactly what they're using. We know the average life cycle of that competitor. We know how much they're paying. We know the strengths and weaknesses. And that's all mega important for a sales conversation, because it's all just kind of informed negotiation. So we position ourselves as an interviewer, figure out where they are here just by asking them questions. And then when they tell us, we can actually give a very tailored call to action. So if someone is ready to purchase and we discover that through dialogue, sweet. You want to get on a call, do a demo, whatever. If someone is not ready to buy, but they're kind of casually comparing solutions and they tell us, it's a different call to action. Hey, how about I send you some visuals so you can, and some side-by-sides so you can compare for when you're ready to buy. Oh, sure. That's exactly where I'm at. Thank you. And so, or they're not ready to compare solutions, but down the road, maybe they will be. It's a different kind of email. It's a different kind of call to action. So as soon as you can figure out exactly what their needs are, you can give a tailored response, but you have to ask the right questions. What's up?
By the way, the great thing about this too is if it's a product oriented stuff, something that you're selling, or really if it's even service based, when you ask them who they're using and they give you that, it's super easy to go out and find social proof on that company and find out what all the negative things that people don't like about that product or that service, and then turn that into a question back to the person. Do you find that they do this well, or that they do that well? It's likely going to be a problem for everybody if there's a lot of social proof out there about particular product or whatever and its deficiencies. So well,
absolutely. And when we kind of first got into LinkedIn, and this is like my journey, so just first figuring it out, you kind of just lean towards ready to purchase call to action. That's kind of the majority of where we started. And then what I discovered is, man, a lot of people just aren't there yet. I really want my client's pipeline to be full. It's a much easier win if we can also put all these people up in the pipeline too, right? So once we started using, we call it the quad method. It's an acronym for question, answer, discussion. So once we started using the quad method, where we just ask the questions and then give them a call to action for higher in the funnel, and then putting them in the CRM, we discovered, and this is just a demo, but just to kind of give you a visual, like within HubSpot, if we were only putting people who are ready to have a sales call in here, it's great because they're targeted, they're ready to buy, it's a short-term win. But this column here, maturing, where they are qualified, they wanted more info, they know who you are, they like you, they trust you. We notice that this column gets really big, really fast. And it is a lot easier to jump into something in your deal pipeline and schedule a follow-up email, a check-in to stay top of mind, than it is to hope that they see your content, to hope that they view your website, to hope that they do whatever, you have that direct line of communication. They know, like, and trust you. And then when they are ready to buy, they move from maturing to lead in. And there's already all that history. So that was a big win for us when we started giving a proper call to action and plugging people into CRM earlier in the sales cycle.
Can I add something to that?
Absolutely.
So go back to your funnel. The ready to purchase, that would be likened to leading with your solution. Because then you're assuming that they're ready to purchase and you're leading with what you are selling them, which shuts it down. So some of the things that we have found in the content part is really getting clear on what the pain is.
Mhm.
What is the problem? Because if you know your solution and you're really clear that they need this, what problem is it solving? And
Yep.
all of these stages is really that gap that connects, their pain. And when their pain is like bleeding and they need more than an
Mhm.
aspirin, then your solution becomes, that they're more ready and they're more open to that. So I love the way you illustrate this. I think it's really, it helps to see it visually like that. But I think the notion of putting people right now, you hear that a lot. I'm going to put you in a funnel. HubSpot put out that thing that it's a flywheel, because it isn't necessarily linear like that, because they may be going around in that process. And I think a lot of the educating comes up here, which is, when you're using the quad method, you're questioning and then you're listening for the signals and then you're reaffirming, yes, that's the pain. Okay, so how do we bridge that? And have thinking, I always think content should educate your buyers to be better buyers of your service.
Yep.
So
Can I add one thing? Sorry.
Sure, of course.
Judy, talking about the ready to purchase. There's one instance that I've run across when going right to that last part of the funnel works. And that is when the demand for whatever you have far exceeds the supply.
Yes, 100%.
So a hard example of it, we have a client that's in the environmental consulting business or contracting business, and they do hazardous materials cleanup. When COVID came along, and here in California anyway, the grocery stores, the stores that were allowed to stay open were having to decontaminate every night. These people had everything that they needed to do that, and all they had to do was let people know, hey, we've got this. And I think I've seen that 3 times in 12 years. It just doesn't happen much.
Yep. Same here, Susan. We ran into the same kind of thing with PPE during lockdowns and stuff. Some similar things right now with like transportation, because the container costs are so high and supply chains all wonky. So definitely there are some contextual times where you can, for sure. Good insight. Yeah, that's really good insight. So going on to the less pretty thing here, just to kind of just type out a couple ideas. So when we're trying to figure out, we've got our target audience, our main goal. I mean, obviously our main end goal is we want to do sales, but for our sales reps, we're really wanting to become the guide to figure out where people are at in this buying cycle, to give a proper call to action and get them plugged into the CRM. So when we're trying to plan out our conversation, kind of view it in milestones. And I like to start at the very end, because if you're not clear on the end, you start at the invite message, it feels like it goes all over the place. And you're like, man, what was I doing? So it's very helpful to first, Monty and I were doing this yesterday. You got to start with what call to actions can you give? It's good to know this, but you also have to figure out, okay, if somebody is ready to purchase, what's my call to action? That's kind of an easy one. It's like, hey, here's my, let me email you my calendar. Here's my Calendly, or let's work out a time on messaging, whatever. But what about when someone's just wanting to compare solutions? Do you have the sales collateral to say, hey, I've got that for you. Can I send it to you? Or what about if they're looking for a case study or a portfolio or whatever it might be, a little higher up? Do you have the resources built to say, yes, I have this for you. Can I send it to you and start a conversation off LinkedIn? So you kind of got to figure out what you have in your arsenal so you can actually give the call to action. So maybe it's maybe our call to action is send portfolio. Let's say we're doing corporate video. Okay, so campaign overview, doing corporate videos. So really the end call to action, I'm assuming that most people want, like if we're targeting, you know, marketing, corporate videos, targeting marketing department. So I'm assuming that if we're targeting people in marketing, corporate video is like every company in 2021 gets it. I need video. It's a matter of, you know, do they do it in-house? Do they not do it at all? Are they already working with someone, right? So I know that really I want them to consume my videos. So my call to action is going to be send a portfolio. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. Then I'm like, well, what do I need to do to make sure that this person and their company are qualified? So I might write down a couple of questions that I might ask, like, you know, do you use video? You know, some companies just don't use video. Maybe I might ask, is it in-house or outsourced? You know, are you involved in the process? And then if so, creative or strategy, right? These are all fantastic talking points. If I approach someone who does marketing at a big company and I do corporate video, I'm like, hey, you guys use video? Hey, do you get to be involved in that? Is your involvement more strategy, or do you actually like hands-on part of the production? This is like, yeah, I'm talking about me. I'm talking about work. This is fun. You're a pro. Easy. It's an easy way to ask the right questions. And then you know exactly if they're qualified. And then if you're asking them if they use video, it just comes up and they'll tell you where they're at. And then, so for that one, it's an easy ask because everybody wants to watch videos. And then the intro, the message one, we might be, I don't know, come visit the studios. And then the invite message, we use it's called the CVC method, common ground, value prop, or compliment. So we might, I don't know. My creative wheels aren't super sharp this morning, but you get the kind of general picture. This kind of framework is always effective, assuming that your targeting is on point and assuming that people care about your offer. If you approach this as I'm going to be the Jay Leno, I'm going to be the interviewer, I'm going to ask you questions about work, I'm directing the conversation, you'll tell me exactly where you're at here. And as soon as you do, me as the guide, I'm going to send you more information. Then we're going to jump right over here to deals. And then boom, you're in my pipeline. And if you're ready to buy now, we book a call. If you're not, you're in maturing. And I have a plan to stay top of mind until you are ready to buy. So that's kind of how we implement that. 95% aren't ready to buy. We still get this 5% in the pipeline with that method. And then we get about, I'd say, if we're selling a product that's like necessary, it's desired, our target is on point, we usually see between, if we can give like a more broad spectrum call to action, we usually see this more 10 to 20% conversion for total connections. So then if you exclude people who aren't talking, that's between 20, 30% of people will say yes. Make sense?
On the intro message, when you say, come look at the studio or something like that, would that be translated as it's more about you and less about them and more salesy if you're doing that? Because why would they want to do that?
Well, it always depends on your audience and who you are and where they are. But Judy, what town do you live in? Can I ask?
Port Washington, Long Island.
So someone said, hey, Judy, love what you do. We do corporate video. You should come visit our studios sometime. Just check it out. You want to swing by? Would you feel like ooh, they're pitching me. Would you feel like, cool, a video company down the road from me, and there's offering for me to come by? I could get into that. I could trust this company.
Okay.
Like,
Well-
I mean, you could approach it a bunch of different ways. I think the more important thing is that you use the framework where you're asking them questions and not assuming that they're here, so you can give a proper call to action.
Here's my question, Isaac, given
Shoot.
all of the spam that's out there and the invite to connect, when people see what it is you do, what you sell, they're expecting you as soon as they connect with you to jump to the pitch. And so getting them to actually connect, what to me, I'm finding is the hardest part, finding that reason that they would want to connect with you without automatically expecting, which is what all the bots have been doing. And so people are less willing to connect. So how are you, getting over that hurdle? Just curious.
So Crystal, it just depends on who you're talking to and what you're selling and the perceived value of knowing each other. I think that if you keep those three things in mind, it's like you plant a seed in the ground and the trees are going to look different every time. So we use a variety of things. If they're local, we'll rely on it being local. If they're industry peers, we'll rely on that camaraderie of industry peers to get the invite accepted. Right. So it kind of varies. I'm sorry, I don't have a hot and fast answer.
Okay. Just curious.
Yeah. So as far as, okay, I want to stop talking. I'll get off my soapbox. I would love to hear any final questions. I'll stop sharing because I would love to hear what everybody else is doing as far as effective sales copy. Any final questions before we jump into here or jump off here?
I have two questions.
Go for it.
The CVC acronym, what did that stand for? The
Complement. Yeah, complement or common ground, value proposition, and complement.
Common ground, value proposition, and complement.
Yeah, and you can use a combo of all three. But think about like any networking event where you need to just do meet and greet. Those are the three things that just get people to start to trust you a little bit. They're easy wins.
Okay. And my second question is, how are you creating that effect with your mouse?
Oh, this is called Cursor Pro.
Okay.
Yes, it's go like that. Pretty cool, huh? It's like I paid $5 lifetime. It's in the App Store.
Okay.
Len told me though that I think Len, if you're still on the call, he told me that the developer is out of the country, so be aware of security issues. So
Yeah.
Thanks, Len. Okay, anybody? I would love to hear from you all now. Do you all have any advice, insight, experience in ideas, strategies for creating effective sales copy effective for the whole 100%, not just something clever for the 5% ready to buy now, but effective for everyone? I'm open to learning new things today.
Well, I'll add one thing is asking permission in your copy if people want to see things. I think because if you send stuff that already has all these links and things, you don't know if they're interested, if they've looked at it, if they're doing anything. So if you ask them, hey, I have this, I thought you might like it, are you interested? Then I think then you either they ignore you, or they say no, or they say, yeah, sure. And so at least you can take a temperature reading on that. And then Crystal, to your point in the getting a higher conversion on invitations, one of the things I found effective with a couple of accounts right now that we're working on is engaging in the content first. So it's sending notifications. And so you're like kind of warming it. And it takes more time that way. But if they are paying attention to notifications and they see that, again, it goes back to what's in it for them. It has to always be about them.
Right. And I do that, but I've been finding it sometimes, and I do work with one of the most difficult target markets to try and get clients, and that's financial advisors because they all do
Oh,
it wrong. And so people already have their guard up. But so I was just kind of curious if people were taking any other different tactics with trying to combat all of the walls that have been put up because of, the spam bots. I mean, like years and years and years ago, I hadn't seen it before I started recommending the whole common connection thing was easy. That worked until until everyone else started doing it. And, now it doesn't anymore. So I was just kind of curious to see if people are finding kind of a new, more general approach, especially for those who don't have the capacity to really do a complete 100% custom approach to each person.
I think that's where the balancing act is. I mean, we do 100% custom approaches, but it is extreme, and it works because it gets through that mental filter of, if you're saying something that lets them know that you really do know who they are, and you're a human being, it works extremely well. But it's really difficult to scale because it's time consuming.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what most people won't spend that time. So trying to find what I kind of call the middle way for people where, they're not going to go to the spam bot, but they're going to come up with some system or method that's not going to be quite as time consuming, is kind of what I'm always trying to accomplish for my clients, whether we're doing the service or I'm just creating the strategy for them or they're in my training programs. So just trying to find that balance, because most are not going to go 100% custom original. They're just not going to do it. So then they don't do it at all. So,
Yeah.
Crystal, I agree with you. I think you're probably in, short of Bitcoin, the hardest industry to do anything with.
oh, I know.
On LinkedIn, because they can't do anything, right, other than go after the 5%. So because of all their restrictions and everything, one thing I've found that works well is try and use humor.
Yeah, no, well, and I mean, I've been a financial planner myself, so I'm one of the leading experts for financial advisors. So usually we focus on just trying to build a relationship and not even touching the sales component.
You might try automating that process first, and then whoever doesn't connect, going back maybe and following up with some more strategic engagement around their content stuff.
Yeah. So just
Could also,
kind of, like I said, curious to see if other people have found strategies specifically to combat that bot fatigue that we have out there and the expectation of the pitch.
Crystal, maybe with that with financial advisors, if they're local, you lean on, hey, I'm in town. I trust someone who's in town a lot more.
I mean, it's especially in the in-person networking, there are so many hungry, just the competition, just trying to go straight to that doesn't even work. And if you're an affluent person, they can smell someone coming for their money, 100 miles away.
Sure.
So it really, it's a bit of a trickier approach. So not necessarily, and usually what I try to focus on again is the WIFT, is what's the value of being a connection without them becoming a client. And so like if they go after small business owners, it's like, well, I could possibly refer people to you if I get to know your business a little bit. Or if they're in a career mode, I have a good network, I might be able to introduce you for future career opportunities, or if they're in the job market. So I really try to take it more to the personal level. But like I said, the guard's just gotten up even higher because of the bots. So.
Would you say, Crystal, that's more of a B2C product too?
It is. Financial advisors, some of them focus on small business owners, but they are mostly B2C. But to me, the difference with them being B2C is that they define their target market based on what they do. So it makes it a lot easier to find them, as opposed to, say, someone who is a chiropractor. There's no way to know if someone's interested or open. But for financial advisors, they define their target market based on what they do. So LinkedIn is kind of ideal for them. And also people use LinkedIn to find a job, and that's a huge money emotion opportunity when they leave their employer to be able to actually capture their funds. So just how do you do that without, looking like a vulture?
Mhm.
Yeah, and I have figured out a lot of those things. It's just, like I said, looking to see if other people found other little tricks to just not seem quite as salesy from the get-go.
If someone told me who's a financial advisor, if they said, hey, Isaac, congrats on owning your own business for like 10 years now. I'd be really curious to hear if you've gotten to the point where, like, are you working with a financial advisor? I wouldn't say it like this, but like, you're working with a financial advisor yet? Or have you been dragging your feet like most business owners to get their 401k and stuff set up?
See, those are the typical approaches that financial advisors use that people don't like.
Okay, they're sick of it. I haven't gotten enough of those yet.
They're getting hit with that stuff all the time. That's why I say you can't take a direct line into that, because they're getting pitched by 10 financial advisors a day almost.
Have you tried using the approach, just calling out the fact that everybody is hit, all financial advisors are like car salesmen and hitting them on a daily basis? And you're not going to be that way.
A big part of it too is we have to get these messages through compliance approval process, because they're being sent to more than 25 people.
Yeah, that's the
You
tough
have
thing.
the added level of compliance, and depending on which firm, whether they're more comfortable, with that. They're just a hard market, and I don't want to take up all the time with them. Like I said, I just wanted to see if people were seeing something new to soften or increase the acceptance rate, because people expect jumping to the bottom of the funnel, the pitch, the moment that they accept the invite.
Mhm.
Anybody else have any practical implementation strategies they'd like to share for everything? Judy, were you talking earlier? I know you got to go. I wasn't.
So me, Judy, I was just
sorry.
going to say, I was going to agree with you about the common ground and the location. I don't do a huge amount of the sales messages in the same way that you guys do, but I found that going for local LinkedIn groups and connecting with people that are local, and then actually going and saying, let's have a one-to-one, like a Zoom one-to-one virtual coffee, has worked really well for some people.
Cool.
Mhm.
But it has to be local, obviously.
Yeah. It's an automatic win if you're in the same town.
Yes.
And if you can even name drop hey, I'll take you out to coffee at Scooters or whatever, something that everybody knows is local. So it's easier to scale that without having to make it super custom, because your audience is so targeted. Yeah. Cool. Anybody else want to share anything? All right. Well, what do you got? What do y'all think? So next week, should we continue on in the same vein with the 95%, 5%, and talk more about things like content marketing, using alerts? How do you stay top of mind relationally and with content for when that account is ready to buy? You think, would that be a good part 2, or is that just too much on the same topic? Love to hear your thoughts.
Staying top of mind is always good to know different tactics.
I mean, for me, I guess it comes down to how open people are to actually sharing. I find it's a lot easier to see real life examples as opposed to just talking kind of in general. We wanted to share maybe, posts that did really well, or messages that did really well, as an example of what's really worked. To me, I find that to be, it's a lot easier to see it in practice as opposed to in just talking about it in theory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe we could grab some material, and if it's client related, just blur it out because of NDAs and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be helpful. Cool. Well, let's plan on doing that next week then, unless something groundbreaking happens where it needs to take priority. Who knows? It's 2021. All right. Thanks everyone for your time. It was good to see y'all. Welcome all you newcomers too. Betsy, Michelle, good to see you.